Good evening and welcome to the City of Woodstock's virtual public planning meeting for Monday, January the 11th, 2021. Tonight's meeting is an open public meeting as required by the Planning Act. This meeting is being live streamed to the city's YouTube channel, and a recording of the meeting will be available and posted on the city's website following the meeting. An agenda can be found on the Agendas, Meetings and Minutes page on the city's website under Inside City Hall heading on the cityofwoodstock.ca homepage. Present here tonight through Zoom, of course, members of council, Deputy City Clerk Alicia Dijak. IT department is here, of course, and the City Engineering and Building Department is represented by Craig Wallace, and Senior Planner from the County of Oxford, Andrea Hackler, is here. Now, if you're watching the meeting, you may not necessarily see these faces unless they're actually asking a question or participating with a delegate or with our Senior Planner. If you will wish to address council at that meeting on Thursday at 1:30 p.m., which is the next city council meeting, you must submit a delegation form to the city clerk no later than 2 p.m. Delegation form is available on the city website. As I mentioned, this meeting is for information and discussion purposes only. No decisions will be made tonight. Council will make a decision on these matters at the regular council meeting to be held on Thursday. That's the 14th of January at 1:30. The meeting, of course, will also be via Zoom and through the city's YouTube channel. Due to the nature of a virtual meeting, the public has been asked to submit a request to speak in advance to allow for pre-meeting electronic connectivity tests with the IT department. But if you are following the agenda online, you will note that there are several submissions made by parties either in favor or against, or either way, either just general comments about each of the 5 applications on tonight's agenda. So by all means, those are included in the minutes as well. Those wishing to make a presentation will join the meeting via video conference, while those wishing to provide comments or answer questions only will call in the meeting via telephone if necessary. But we have quite a few delegates tonight that will be appearing via Zoom. When recognized by the chair to speak, you must provide your name and address for the public record and your exact role before giving your comments. Only the applicant or people who provide oral or written comments regarding the application are entitled to appeal to the council's decision if they want to appeal to the local planning appeal tribunal. Please keep your comments to planning matters only and avoid repeating comments that have already been expressed. I'll try to keep things flowing properly as the chair for this meeting. If you have not provided oral or written comments but do wish to receive formal notice of the council's decision on the matter, please contact the city clerk's office, and the notice will provide further information on how you can appeal the decision. Here's sort of what the game plan is for each of the 5 agenda items. The planner will be asked to present the planning report for each application. Then the applicant will be given the opportunity to make their comments, followed by those wishing to speak in favor of the application, and anyone who wants to speak against the application would then get their opportunity to speak as well. So with that in mind, we have 5 items on tonight's agenda, longer agenda than many recent meetings that we've had. We'll start with item number 1 on the agenda, ZN 8-20-21, an application for a zone change, and the address is 34 Bain Street. Our Andrea Hackler from the County of Senior Planner from the County of Oxford will do her presentation now for 34 Bain Street.
Thank you. So the first application tonight is an application for zone change, and the applicant is proposing to rezone the subject lands from residential zone 2, R2, to residential zone 3, R3. And this will facilitate the development of 2 fourplexes on the subject property. And as Councillor Schattenberg indicated, it's for lands located at 34 Bain Street. The proposed development is proposing the 2 residential buildings, and I'll just skip down to the proposed, this is actually the landscape plan, but the applicant is using it also as their site plan. I apologize, it's a bit blurry, but you can see there's the 2 buildings that the applicant's proposing. Each would have 4 units in them. The parking fronts onto Bain Street, has direct access to Bain Street. There are a number of, and anyone who is familiar with the area will know that there's a number of mature trees on the property, and the applicant has purposely designed the site with the trees in mind to try to preserve as many as possible. believe the applicant will speak later to the number of trees that are on the site and the number that they are able to maintain through the development. The subject property is 2,411.8 square meters and it's currently vacant. The applicant provided a noise and vibration feasibility study to address any sort of compatibility issues with the neighboring rail line. That's a CP railway. And the applicant also filed a record of site condition with the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks to ensure that the site is not contaminated and that it is suitable for residential development. We recently received confirmation from the ministry indicating that the record of site condition has been filed and that the site is suitable for residential development. The subject lands are designated low density residential. And as I indicated, the applicant's proposing to go from R2 to R3. And the R3 zone permits a variety of multiple residential development or multiple unit development, including an apartment dwelling house, converted dwelling house, and then a variety of different types of townhouses. And these ones would be considered multiple attached dwellings. This application was circulated to staff and staff were generally satisfied with the application. And any issues with regard to landscaping, buffering, screening, grading, drainage, those types of things will all be addressed at a later date through the site plan approval process, which the applicant is aware of. The application was circulated to was circulated to the surrounding property owners, and we did receive a letter from a neighboring property owner, which should be attached to council's package. The main concern submitted by the neighboring property owner was related to parking. And then in response to the parking concern, I should let council know that the applicant is in fact providing the required number of parking spaces. The requirement for multiple attached dwelling is 1.5 spaces per unit, and the applicant is proposing a total of 12 parking spaces. I did get a call earlier today too from a councillor with concerns relating to how far the parking area was set back from the street line to ensure that there are no sightline concerns or maintenance concerns for Bain Street, and the parking area, and again, it's a little bit blurry, so it's difficult to see these setbacks, but they are in fact meeting the minimum requirement of the 1.5 meter setback. So staff are satisfied with the application. We feel that it's a form of infill and it's promoting intensification. It's providing a mix of housing to this area. And it is also an efficient use of lands and infrastructure. It's also in keeping with the low density designation. Fourplexes are a use that are contemplated by this designation. And again, it's promoting a mix of housing types in this area. The number of units is also in keeping with the density. And as I indicated, the applicant is providing the required number of parking spaces. They're also providing ample space to provide screening and buffering. As I indicated, they are trying to maintain as many trees as possible, which will help with compatibility in the neighborhood. And then with respect to the noise and vibration feasibility study, the report indicated that the railway would have noise that would be in excess of the ministry guidelines. Due to that, the report recommends that the dwellings be equipped with central air, that windows have glazing, the windows have upgraded glazing, there's brick exterior, and then also all the tenants would receive a warning clause on all their tenant agreements, and that would be to ensure that they're aware that there is a railway in the area. And If those measures are implemented, which we will ensure that they're implemented through the site plan agreement, but once they are implemented properly, then the noise levels would be in compliance with the ministry requirements. Further to that, we will be requiring a detailed noise study once the detailed floor plans and building elevations have been determined through the site plan process. And that would just make sure that any other mitigation measures that would be required would be put into place at that time. In light of our review of the application, we'd recommend that this application be given favorable consideration.
Thanks, Andrea, for your report there for 34 Bain Street. Are there any questions or comments from members of council that they'd like to make to our senior planner? Questions or concerns? I always say kind of good, bad, or indifferent. Seems to be very straightforward. I got one question though for our planner, Andrea. On the notation, it says the municipal storm sewer is not available on Bain Street. Does that create any kind of a drainage issue whatsoever? I do know there's a lot of trees at the back of that property. I drove by it earlier today, but just maybe explain the sanitary sewer, water main, and storm sewer issues that came up through the engineering department for that property.
Through to Councillor Schadenberg's question. I can speak to it a little bit, but then I'll probably pass it off to the chief building official as he probably has a better knowledge of this. However, so in light of the comments that were submitted by the city's development engineer, it was indicated that that's correct. There's no municipal storm sewer available on Bain Street. And so through the site plan approval process, we would take a closer look at drainage and stormwater management, and a low impact development may be required. And that's basically a type of system that ensures that the water is maintained on the site. There's different approaches that can be used, but that's basically what the development engineer has indicated. I'm not sure if Mr. Wallace has anything further to add, but I'll just let him comment further if he likes.
Thank you, Ms. Hackler. No, your answer was fine. It was a good answer. It explains that the stormwater will be stored on site for a little bit before it drains off onto the neighboring properties or onto the street.
Any other further comments or questions to our planner, or I guess even to our chief building official, Craig Wallace, from members of council? Seeing none, we will certainly at this point in time want to welcome our delegation. There's two members that are delegates for this item number 1 on our agenda. That being representing the applicant is Bill McLeod. And as I mentioned at the beginning of the show, make sure you give us your name and your address and your title, and that we can make sure that's part of the minutes for the meeting. And also part of the delegation is Bram Vandenheuvel from Stonecrest Engineering. If those two individuals would like to make any comments they'd like to have at this point in time to come on here.
Thanks, Mark. Yeah, so my name's Bram. I'm with Stonecrest Engineering, and I'm just part of the process to kind of answer any questions and kind of make myself available for that. But I think at this point, Andrew's done a really good job kind of presenting everything in the context of the project. But just for the record, our office is located at 2079 line 34, and that's in Shakespeare, Ontario. And so just so that I've added that information in. But like I mentioned, I'm just here to support Bill and our clients in this process and answer any other questions.
Sandra Talbot, Councillor, do you have a question you'd like to make at this point?
Yes, I do. Andrea mentioned that we were going to find out exactly how many trees were on the property and how many with this plan they are expecting to save. And I was wondering if they could, it's very hard to read the print on the landscape plan, but I'm curious to know what kind of trees they are.
Mr. McLeod or Mr. Vanden Heuvel?
How you doing? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Through the chair to, is that Councillor Talbot? We have currently there's 50 trees on the site. 49 of them are black walnut. There's one red maple that's in a bad state, so it's not likely going to make it. It's out of those 50 trees, we're taking down 10. The plan is to take down 10. We're replacing all 10 of those trees on the same lot, just in different areas more near where the parking is. And there'll be more of a decorative, different types of trees, like maybe a red maple. They're on the plan, which kind of be. So there's 50 trees right now, and there'll remain 50 trees. And then I guess 20 trees as part of the penalty will be donated to the city.
Sure, go ahead, Sandra.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to say that's very admirable. We have a lot of developments that go on and the trees are just all cut down. So you have to be commended to save them, especially black walnuts. I think it'll only add and help to minimize noise and view of the train tracks. It'll be some type of mitigation for it as well too. So thank you for doing that.
Do you have any general comments you'd like to make, Bill? Because Bram was already on here making a couple of comments. And anything you want to do as a follow-up?
I guess just to introduce myself, I'm Bill McLeod. There's 4 of us that own this company, and 2 of us live in London, 2 of us in Woodstock, and other than that, we're called River Birch Developments, and I guess our address right now, our functioning address is 1683 Valhalla Street in London. And other than that, yeah, this originally was meant to be, we were hoping for a geared income project, but we'll do this, and then we'll continue wanting to do stuff in Woodstock. And again, with the trees, one of our partners is a big fan of trees, so she's got lots of ideas for decorative trees. So it should look like a really nice site with pavilion trees and maybe some trails back in the forested area. So that's all for me. If anybody has no more questions.
Yeah, any other comments or questions for either Mr. McLeod or Mr. Vanden Heuvel at this time from members of council? As I mentioned at the top of the agenda here tonight, we certainly would want people to pre-register so we can test connectivity tests and also to be able to get an idea as to the number of delegates, whether they're coming on to speak in favor or against, or just make comments in general about an application. So now I'll ask if there's anybody online that would like to speak against the application. I don't believe there was anybody. Anybody online here to speak in favor of the application? And again, also, as I previously mentioned, if there's any kind of comments that have been added to our agenda, council will certainly be reading through those comments and letters that are attached to the agenda before Thursday's meeting, and read them already to begin with before tonight's planning meeting as well. So we thank Mr. McLeod and Mr. Vanden Heuvel, our applicants for 34 Bain Street, for their participation here tonight as we move on the agenda. Item number 2 is a residential question as well. It's application for a zone change, ZN 8-20-22. Christine Woodruff and Sarah Gage are here as applicants, so we'll talk to them in a few minutes. 919 Sloan Street is the address. As we welcome back our senior planner, Andrea Hackler, one more time to discuss this item on the agenda.
Thank you. So this application for zone change proposes to rezone the subject lands from R1 to R2, and the applicant is proposing to convert an existing single detached dwelling to a converted dwelling house with 2 residential units. And as Councillor Schattenberg pointed out, the proposal is for 919 Sloane Street. The applicant is not proposing any exterior renovations, and the second unit is being proposed in the basement. The subject property is approximately 620.8 square meters and is occupied by a single detached dwelling and a detached garage. I should mention too, the surrounding area. Oh, I apologize. I forgot to share my screen. The surrounding area includes single detached dwellings. There are also a number of semi-detached dwellings just further east on Sloane Street. And then there is a townhouse development further north on Clark Street. So there's a mix of residential uses in the area. The proposal is in keeping with the low density residential designation. And as for the zoning, the applicant's proposing to go from an R1 to an R2. However, the proposal is in keeping with all of the R2 provisions, and no additional relief is required. The application was circulated to staff, and staff are generally supportive of the application. The building department indicated that 2 parking spaces would be required, 1 space for each unit, and that the applicant would be required to have the building department review the proposed driveway expansion, and they would also need an excavation permit for any work proposed in the road allowance, which the applicant is aware of. And to speak further to the parking, staff are satisfied that I can scroll down to the aerials. Staff are satisfied that 2 parking spaces can be provided on the site. The existing driveway would likely need to be expanded. There is a garage, so the parking spaces that are included, or parking space that is included in the garage, could be considered a legal parking space. So staff are satisfied that adequate parking can be provided on the site without the need to be parking on the street. The application was circulated to neighboring property owners. We did receive, I believe it's 2 letters, 1 letter from a neighboring property owner, which was relating to parking and traffic. Because they are able to provide the required amount of parking on the site, staff are not concerned with parking, and we don't feel that an additional unit would cause further traffic concerns on the site. In light of our review, we feel that this application is in keeping with the provincial policy statement. It's promoting intensification, and it's providing a mix of housing types. This type of development, a converted dwelling with 2 units, is permitted in the low density residential designation. And we feel that the site is large enough to provide adequate space for the setbacks, parking, and as I indicated, no exterior renovations are being proposed. We feel that the development is still in keeping with the character of the neighborhood. So in light of that, I'd recommend that this application be given favorable consideration.
Thanks, Ms. Hackler, for your presentation there on item number 2 on our agenda here tonight. Is there any members from council that would have any comments that they would like to make towards Andrea Hackler's presentation? Go ahead, Councilor Sandra Talbot.
Thank you, Chair. Through to Andrea. In the report, it talked about the second driveway and the fact that it's not on, I haven't seen it, it's not on the plan that was sent to us. So can you give me some type of idea where it would be located? There is a tree on that side of the property. Would it be at the very back of the property?
Through the chair to Councillor Talbot's question, I believe you're referring to the comments that were provided by the city development engineer. Is that correct?
Could be.
He mentioned in his comments that, okay, so he mentioned, just stop me if I'm going down the wrong the wrong path,
Okay.
but he mentioned in his comments that an original submission had shown 2 driveways. And so I think what the proposal showed was that there would be a driveway on the North Park Crescent side, and then as well as a driveway on Sloane Street. However, I believe that the city engineering, and again, Craig may want to speak further to this, but I believe that the preference would be expanding the single driveway on Sloane Street as opposed to adding an additional driveway. But as you indicated, the drawing that we have that was submitted with the application does not show a second driveway. And so we could discuss that further with the applicant.
Okay, because we should
but if
know
council did
where
not-
everybody's going to park. I mean, if there's already a complaint about parking now, there needs to be adequate space. Now, looking at the aerial, there looks to be enough property for an expansion on the actual driveway there. Mind you, there's a tree there, unless they went into the front of the house. So I would be interested when the applicant has an opportunity to find out how they're going to handle that. Thank you.
You're on mute, Mark.
Yeah, go ahead, Jerry, if you've got a question you'd like to have at this point in time.
Yeah, just more of a comment along with Councillor Talbot, just more of a question of, can we put, or is it possible to put a driveway there? I just wasn't sure, being so close to the intersection of North Park Crescent, if there is going to be any restrictions, or could it simply go right beside where the current driveway was, because they certainly need to have parking there. And who's best to answer that? Probably the planner, or would, yeah, Craig, thank you. Yeah.
Chairman, through to the question, the property certainly would permit a driveway off of North Park Crescent. The zoning bylaw requires a minimum 7.5 meter setback from the intersection of the 2 streets, which can be easily accommodated. So if the applicant chooses, a driveway could be installed there. As well, the existing driveway off of Sloane Street could certainly be widened in front of the existing home. Again, the zoning provisions could easily be met there. So I think it's up to the applicant where they want that second parking space to go.
Perfect. Thanks, Craig. Thanks, Mark.
Sandra, you have a follow-up? Sandra Talbot, Councillor, go ahead.
I do, Chair. Thank you. Through to the Chief Building Inspector. So if a new driveway is to be formed off of North Park Crescent, or even the one on Sloane is to be expanded, we will have to do a curb cut and remove the sidewalk and then redo it so there's a ramp available to access it. Is that correct?
Mr. Chairman, through to the question, yes, typically a property owner would come into the office and apply for an excavation permit. We would require a plan which shows where the driveway is. It goes through various personnel in the office for approval. And then, yes, a curb cut, sidewalk lowering, etc., would be arranged for and paid for by the applicant.
Okay, thank you, Craig.
Any other further comments or questions for either our planner, Andrea Hackler, or from the building department, Craig Wallace, from members of council, that is? Seeing none at this point in time, we certainly like to welcome in the 2 of the delegates, Christine Woodruff and Sarah Gage, if they could tell us who they are and what their municipal address is and what their exact position is with this application.
Well, hi, I'm Christine Woodruff. My address is 859 Springbank Avenue here in Woodstock. And I guess my title is co-owner of the property along with Sarah. I have no concerns with the report, so I have nothing else to add at this time unless there's some other questions maybe concerning the parking.
And I'm Sarah Gage, and my address is 6 Lowry Ave South in Cambridge, and obviously co-owner with Christine of the property at 919 Sloane Street.
Jerry, I saw your picture appear up on the screen here first, so I'll let you go first. Councillor Jerry Accioni.
Thank you. Through the chair to, I suppose, either Sarah or Christine. I'm just curious about the parking. Obviously, you've been listening in to what Councillor Talbot was talking about as well. Do you have plans, or what are your thoughts?
Yeah,
with
maybe.
what you intend on? Yeah.
Maybe to kind of give some history of to where that second driveway comment came from. So when we were originally pulling together our application, we were working with Rebecca Smith because our initial intent was to add a second driveway because the access to the basement is right at the back of the house. So our initial thought was that that would alleviate any duplication of traffic on the original driveway. But after kind of informal review through the office, there was some concerns because there are several mature trees on that side of the property. So we kind of scrapped that idea, and our intention now is to widen the existing driveway to accommodate spaces or the additional spaces needed at the property.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Oh, yeah, go ahead, Senator Talbot.
Thank you, Chair, either through to Christine or Sarah. So can you tell me at the end of the day how many parking spaces you'll be providing for the 2 units?
Well, the requirement is that there is 1 per unit, but likely what'll happen is 1 unit will have 3 and 1 will have 2. So there'll be ample at the property.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead, Councillor Ron Fraser.
Thank you, and through to Christine and Sarah. You said 1 will have 3 and 1 will have 2. So would that be in tandem?
Yeah, the driveway's a little funny because it's kind of off center to the garage. So right now there's the single car garage and then space for 2 cars on the actual paved, the existing paved driveway. And we would like to add spaces for an additional 2 on the right. So yeah, there would be 2 in tandem, brand new, and then 3, I guess, in tandem that exist right now.
3 in tandem would be pretty tight coming out to the curb, I would think. But I'd have to get Craig to clarify the uses of the allowability of tandem towards parking for units. But at this, as my understanding, you'd only have to provide 1 spot per unit, as I understand it.
Correct.
And just I know Councillor Talbot mentioned it today, but I know there was a parking complaint today that there was a vehicle parked on that property that was obstructing the sight lines off of North Park Crescent onto Sloane, I believe. Were you aware of that?
I was not aware. Well, I received a call today about that, but I have not observed it myself, and I did contact the tenant and she had absolutely no idea what the complaint was about. So I'm not sure where it came from.
I just wanted to make sure that you two are aware of that, because parking is obviously, there's 3 of us who are harping on parking, probably 4 because I see Councillor Lauder on there now. That parking is becoming a bigger issue that we have to deal with all the time.
Yeah, Sloane is a very busy road, so I understand that. I don't even like parking on Sloane when I visit. I'll pop onto North Park because it is very busy there.
Yeah, and I'll be upfront with you. I'm not a proponent of changing R1 designations to R2. It all depends on the streetscape and the other residents on the street. So I'm not totally convinced on this, and I'm just telling you that so you know.
Yep, I appreciate your honesty.
Councillor Connie Lauder, go ahead, Connie.
Thank you. And yes, I heard the complaints about the parking also. And when I drove by today, there were 2 vehicles, a truck and a car in the drive. So you're saying that the extended drive would go to the right, it's not in front of the house, it's to the right? There's enough room there to extend that driveway?
Yes, the property goes quite a bit to the east, so there is plenty of space there right now.
Okay, okay. And I too go along with what Councillor Fraser is saying about the R1 to R2. So I have thoughts on that. So just to let you know, and thank you for the explanation of the parking, and that is definitely a concern that I have. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Go ahead again, Councillor Sandra Talbot, you've got the floor.
Thanks, Chair. Just a last question. So if I'm looking at the topographical map presently, and if you're going to the east, then now you're cutting down a tree?
It isn't our intent. There's a very large, I think it's a maple tree that's actually on the neighbor's property. So any overhang you see is not within our property. There is a very dilapidated looking other tree that's there, and that's actually why the driveway comes around. I think whenever they originally paved that, they didn't want to cut it down, but between that tree and the street, it's actually quite a big area. So we weren't going to cut down that tree, even though it doesn't look the greatest. We were going to pave in front of it, so between that tree and the street.
So it would, okay. Okay.
Yeah, the current driveway still allows access into the garage. So, I mean, that would be the only reason, I think, if we wanted to straighten up, but it's not impeded right now.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
My question, I guess, and since the councilors have had an opportunity to speak already, would be more to do with along the fact that if this is an up and down duplex, the people residing in the lower level and the people residing in the main level would certainly not be related to each other, and neither one of them would be the owners either. So it'd be strictly an up and down duplex as an income property.
That's the intent, yes.
Give me an explanation too quickly on how the egresses work. Is it a walk out basement from the lower level, or is it a walk up? Where there be separate entrances for each tenant to enjoy to the exterior, or whether it be one of them would be a shared exit, say at the side door on the garage side? How does that work?
So each unit is accessible by its own door. So the front door goes to the top unit, and then there is a door in the rear of the building that goes directly down into the basement. We picked this property because it has very large windows in the basement, but we would obviously be installing the required egress windows in the bedrooms as required by the building code as well.
Any other questions or comments from members of council? Both the applicants probably realize this fact that they've been following the local news that the city of Woodstock, city council in general, currently has two delegations going to LPAT to try to turn over decisions the council have made over up and down duplexes in R1 zoning areas, one being on Pebble Beach and one being on Devonshire. So I will add to what Ron Fraser was saying earlier. I believe it was also Connie Lauder about hesitations towards doing too much modifications to the R1 zoning. And I talked to Gord Huff at Oxford County Planning, who's in charge of the planning department for the county of Oxford. And he was talking about the fact that at some point in time, yes, the city of Woodstock, based on intensification in the provincial policy statement, must be looking at doing something along the lines of allowing these auxiliary or extra apartments in lower levels of a basement. But at this point in time, we certainly have not created any kind of a bylaw with minimum standards allowing it to any degree whatsoever. So I'm not saying you're putting the cart before the horse here, but there certainly is that ongoing with the LPAT two projects already in the city of Woodstock that have gone to LPAT to sort of say, well, no, we want the R2 zoning in an R1 zoning area. So you're certainly not the first, but I'm sure you realize that.
Mm-hmm.
Any other comments Sarah or Christine would like to make before we go on in the agenda? And again, as I've said to you before, there no actual decisions are made at tonight's meeting. This is a public meeting, and Thursday at 1:30 is a city council meeting. And by all means, you can be delegates again at the city council meeting at 1:30 on Thursday afternoon, the both of you.
I have nothing to add.
Okay, thanks a lot. Next item on the agenda is item number 3 for tonight, the application for official plan amendment and zone change for Southside Construction Management Limited. So it's a London-based construction company, but the address is 245 Drew Street, and in essence, the corner of Drew Street and Oxford Street in the city of Woodstock. I give the floor over to our senior planner, Andrea Hackler, to describe this proposal.
Thank you. So this application is for an official plan amendment and a zone change, and it's for lands located at 245 Drew Street. And sorry, I'll share my screen here. And the applicant is proposing to redesignate the subject lands from community facility to high density residential, and also proposing to rezone the subject lands from special community facility zone to a special residential zone. And the proposed development will, the official plan amendment and the zone change will facilitate the development of a five-story apartment dwelling house with a total of 78 units. Parking is being proposed. I can show you, there we go. Parking is being proposed on the surface lot as well as on the ground floor of the proposed building. And access is being proposed from Winnett and Oxford Street. The proposed zone change will increase, is seeking site-specific zoning, which would increase the maximum lot coverage, decrease the minimum front yard depth, rear yard depth, exterior side yard width, landscape open space, amenity area, and reduce a number of the parking spaces. For council's information, the subject property has, or the subject development has undergone some changes from the time that they originally submitted the application. Through the notice of complete application, we received comments from a number of parents who sent their children to the French immersion school, as well as the school board, and they had indicated that there was, in fact, basically like a historical issue between the two sites, in that the playground and a fenced-in area was from the school was fully enclosed on Southside's property. Through discussions with Southside and the school board, it was determined that a lot addition would take place. And so Southside severed this portion of land and added it to the school board site so that the playground could be on the school site. This issue probably took place many years ago when there was the church, St. Rita's Church was on this site, and then the Catholic school was on the other site, and it was probably at one point in time one parcel, and then there was a severance that took place when the church moved out to Devonshire, the Devonshire area, and so that's when the playground was kind of left behind. But Southside did work to fix that situation. However, based on that, they did have to revise their plan. They increased the development by a single story, but they did have to, that's one of the reasons why they've had to request some of the setback reductions and lot coverage, et cetera, because the site is smaller. I should also mention that there was an official plan amendment and a zone change done on the site when the Catholic Church moved from the site, and that was to redesignate and rezone the lands from residential to community facility, and to rezone them to a major institutional zone. And that was at the time to facilitate a 4-story retirement home with 72 beds. And so in this case, the proposal is a little bit different in that it's a residential development, but it's 5 stories and 78 dwelling units. So not too far from what was previously proposed and approved by council. The total area of the site is 1.36 acres, and the applicant provided a shadow study as well as a noise and vibration assessment. And the noise and vibration assessment was to take into consideration ArcelorMittal, the industrial development, neighboring this property, as well as the CP Railway. The application was circulated to staff, and staff were generally supportive of the application, with the exception of one thing. The applicant is proposing a passenger drop-off area on Drew Street, which is on the city's road allowance. City engineering indicated that they understood that this would not affect the zone change and the official plan amendment. If city and county council were to approve the applications, that wouldn't mean that the passenger drop-off was permitted. And so city engineering had indicated that they were satisfied with the applications going forward, and that the passenger drop-off would be discussed through the site plan approval process. If the applicant would like to pursue the passenger drop-off on the city's road allowance, they will have to come to council and request that from council for council's approval before we would go forward with the site plan application. Aside from that, staff are generally supportive of the application. And then the application also was circulated to the neighboring property owners. We did receive a couple of letters from neighboring property owners. They were generally with respect to compatibility, traffic, parking, and privacy, and the letters were attached for council's consideration. So I'll just circle back to the compatibility issues. We did receive a letter, and we have had numerous conversations with staff at ArcelorMittal, and they indicated that they were initially concerned. They did not want, or they had concerns with more residential development in the area and potential concerns with the noise that takes place on their site. It's a business that's been there for many, many years, and they'd like to continue to operate within the city at that location. So the noise impact study did address their operation, as well as any noise that's transmitted from their site, as well as the railway. And through the study, it was determined that the noise actually from the railway is much louder than from the industrial operation. There are a number of noise mitigation measures that are recommended. Similar to the last proposal at 34 Bain Street, the mitigation measures are generally related to building materials, noise clauses, and then also air conditioning units in the units, in the residential units, so that they do not have to have windows open and therefore are subject to noise around the clock. So, and staff were satisfied too that it already is a built up residential area. And so proposing additional residential, we don't think that would cause more concern for the industrial operations, especially if we're able to implement noise mitigation measures through site plan and the site plan agreement. Generally, staff are satisfied with the application. We feel that it's in keeping with the provincial policy statement. It's a form of infill housing. It promotes intensification, and it enhances the mix of housing types in the area. It's an efficient use of an underutilized site. It's suitable, in our opinion, for high density based on its location. It's located on 2 minor collector roads, and it's in close proximity to Ingersoll Avenue, which is an arterial road. Those 3 streets are designed for higher amounts of traffic. We feel that the reduction in parking from 129 spaces to 112 spaces is satisfactory, that the 78 units, the parking can be accommodated on the site. Staff and council have supported similar proposals in the past, and we don't feel that there have been issues with these developments or that they've created adverse impacts on the neighboring area. Further to that, the site is reasonably located. It has access to schools, leisure facilities, shopping, and parks, and they're all within less than a kilometer. including the downtown. And then with respect to the density, staff are satisfied that the proposal is in keeping with the density, and the height is also in keeping with the high density residential designation. Staff are recommending that to limit the height and the density, that we would create a site specific official plan amendment and zoning, and that would keep this proposal in place, I guess, in the policies and the zoning, so that if anyone came forward with a different proposal, then they would be subject to a public process again. And council would have to consider that proposal at that time. And I believe, and then with respect to increasing the lot coverage and decreasing the landscape open space, as well as decreasing the some of the setbacks, staff are satisfied that these reductions are still allowing for sufficient space to be provided for drainage, and we still feel that there's adequate landscaping on the site and outdoor amenity space. We also feel that being closer to the downtown, there's a number of parks in the area that these tenants would have access to. And so in general, we feel that the requests are fairly minor and they're still desirable for the area. So in light of that, I would recommend that this application be given support by City Council.
Any questions from members of council? I see Ron Fraser coming up first. Go ahead, Councillor Fraser.
Thank you, and through to Andrea. Andrea, if you could throw back up your the lot plan with the parking. Yes. So this makes it easier. Thank you. Of course, as you well know, some of my considerations always go toward parking and whether they're sufficient, because there's very little room for on-street parking in that area. The parking entrance off of Oxford Street, does that appears on this diagram that does not pass right through to the rest of the parking lot? Is that blocked off? Is that like a visitor's parking area? What is there, 5 spots there or not? This might not be an unfair question for you, but that's the appearance of that. I don't know if you have any information on that or not.
Sorry, with the shared screen, I had to finagle the system.
That's quite all right.
So I think that this image might be more helpful for you. So this is the parking area that you were referring to, and
yes,
as far as I understand, it goes straight through. But the applicant, perhaps when it's his chance to speak, maybe he can speak further.
Okay. Yeah, maybe the applicant can clarify that. But just going by the other diagram, it looks like there's a sidewalk that comes down across the front of those parking spots and down beside the one, which would leave very little room for a car to pass through if there's a car passing the last spot or the first spot of the other parking lot. I was just curious about that because it all goes towards snow removal as well. Where is the snow going to go to? So if we have winters like this one, we haven't had much to deal with so far. Thank you, Andrew.
So sorry, I'll just follow up with the snow storage. Sorry, through the chair to Councillor Fraser. So snow storage is definitely something that we take into consideration. However, this site plan and these images are fairly at this point in time, they're conceptual. And so with respect to snow storage, that's something that we would discuss. I mean, the city engineer takes a look at it to make sure that it can be accommodated, but it isn't something necessarily that we require on the plan at this point in time. So he would have a general feeling that it can be facilitated on the site. but that's something that we discuss further at the site plan stage.
Go ahead, Councillor Accioni.
Thanks, through the chair to Andrea. Besides the parking, I have the same kind of concerns as Councillor Fraser, but the shade study, with being a school beside it, and correct me if I'm wrong, that section that's going to be given to the school, I believe that is their junior kind of player area, where the playground for the young kids. Just looking at the shade study, it looks like it's going to be pretty well in shade for, I'm going to guess, until early afternoon while school's on. Has the school brought any concerns that way that you're aware of?
Through the chair to Councillor Accioni's question. So the shadow study that was undertaken, it did note that that it was in keeping with the industry standards. Generally, the industry standards require that a shadow study, I'll just read this part, a shadow study must demonstrate that at least 50% or more of any property should not be shaded for more than 2 intervals. So a 4-hour equivalency, or at least 50% of any property should be in full sun for at least 2 interval times. So a 4-hour equivalency. And it was indicated that the proposal does meet those standards, and that no sites are shaded longer than they should be allowed. I can also I know that the Mr. Hannam, who is representing Southside Construction, he's here tonight, and he was the one that actually provided commentary on the shadow study. So perhaps he would like to speak to that further.
I'm okay with that if the chair is okay with him speaking right now.
Yeah, that's fine. We'll
Just
have
to
Dave
save
Hannam
time.
from Zelenka Priam will come on and just talk specifically about the shadow study, since it's our topic of
Thank you.
discussion right now.
Good evening, Dave Hannam, Senior Associate with Zelenka Priam. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep, thank you.
I just wanted to pick up on that shadow study stuff. So in terms of the analysis, we provided all the shadow diagrams on one page, so they're not the clearest to look at, but from if you have a look at the electronic document, all of the shadow predominantly falls on the subject land. So with regards to the shadowing of the school property to the north, the only time that it's in shadow is in December. And in terms of that analysis, it falls in shadow for most of the day. Obviously, in December, the shadows are moving the closest. Generally, students are not out at site as much, but what we tried to do was model it. If you have a look at on the westerly side of the school property is all the hard courts, etc. So the only shadow that falls on those hard courts is about 10 o'clock in the morning on December. The rest of the time, it's not in shadow at all. The remainder of the year, there isn't any shadowing that extends beyond that northerly boundary of the site.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for coming on.
You're welcome.
Any other questions or comments from council? Councillor Connie Lauder, go ahead. Just again, towards our senior planner or our chief building official.
Thank you. This again is regarding the parking. So what the required is you're saying 1.5 and so which would be 129 according to the records here. And then so that leaves that they're only going to have 112. I know there's an apartment building near where I live, and the reduced parking was left. Now there's parking on the street, which is a real problem. And I really have a concern about the shortage of parking spaces, especially around a school where they're dropping off children. There's buses going to be parked there, and so on. And that is a big concern of mine, to reduce it by that amount. And that would include the visitor parking also, would it? Through to Ms. Ashler or to Mr. Hannam?
Yeah, look, I'd be happy to answer that question if you like. So out of the total number of spaces that we're providing, we're not looking for any relief from the required number of visitor spaces or the required number of barrier-free spaces. So we're fully complying with what the requirements are for those. What we are asking for is a modest reduction with regards to the number of units, spaces just for the actual units themselves. Because the tenure is rented here, we feel as though that aspect can be controlled through the landlord in terms of, if you don't have a car or there's not a car space, more than one car space available for your unit, then you can't park there in that respect. So we were very cognizant to ensure that we provided suitable visitor spaces and also barrier free. And just to pick up on the other councillor's comment about the parking, the small parking area that's located Oxford for 5 spaces, there's actually a retaining wall between that and the other parking spaces that are accessed off Winnett Street. So there's no, it's not a through access in that respect, and we're trying to provide some spaces off that Oxford Street to sort of to encourage people. That's where you get your barrier-free access into the actual entrance to the building as well. So it's trying to encourage short-term service deliveries, etc. And then the remainder of the residents parking and the bulk is the visitor spaces come in from the westerly end at Winnett.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other further comments or questions to our planner from council? I guess my question as chair to our senior planner, to Andrea Hackler, is we talk lots about the provincial policy statement and transition from low density to medium density to high density residential. And this would seem to be across the street would be low density single family homes, yet this would be a high density based on the number of units there. And the fact that it's 5 stories, literally across the street, seems to lack transition. And I know the provincial policy statement 2020 is sort of a brand new document that we're still all kind of wrapping our heads around as far as city council members go. And it's certainly something you're very well aware of as well as how that goes. But what are the thoughts therefore on the single family homes on one side of the street and high density residential on the other side of the street?
So through to your question, Councillor Schadenberg, it's our opinion that so initially the one thing that we considered also is that there's already an approval for a 4-story building on the site, a retirement building. And so we felt that going from the 4 stories to the 5 stories was not too big of a difference. In addition to that, we feel that the site is located on the periphery of the low density residential. And I'll just go back and share my screen so you can see what I'm talking about. So if you, you can see that the site here, this is all low density in the area. However, this is on the periphery. This is an institutional use. These are industrial uses on either side. And then there's the railroad tracks. So we thought that, to put a high density development on the periphery of a low density residential area would be acceptable. Going to the 5 stories instead of the 4 stories is not that big of a leap. And then also, like, although it's a high density development, it's only 5 stories. And so it's not an 8-story or a 12-story. So we feel that the scale of it is okay for the area. The school itself is 2 stories. And the industrial buildings are larger buildings too. If anything, actually, I was thinking today that perhaps the residential development will act as a bit of a buffer to the railroad tracks for the residential, the lower density residential developments. They won't have that view anymore, as well as the building may cut down on some of the noise that they experience, because they won't have those noise mitigation measures that the apartment building will, because it'll be a new building, right? Whereas a lot of these houses are probably century homes. So in light of that, we felt that it is a suitable development for the area. Also, it's on its own block with the school, and so it's not right up against like side by side with a single detached dwelling. So that kind of gives it some space too. There's some street separation in there as well.
Sometimes as counselors, we like to give a little bit of extra detailed information about sort of our history and our past. Just let everybody know that's participating in this meeting today. I actually grew up in the corner of Oxford and Drew Street and went to the old St. Mary's Church. It doesn't exist anymore. And St. Mary's Rectory, and of course the St. Mary's Halls, where I went to as Cubs when I was 10, 11, 12 years old, Boy Scouts. So there's certainly a good connection with my family and my past in that neighborhood. The flip side immediately for that, though, is it's in essence a brownfield that really must be redeveloped. We talk about sometimes boundary adjustments in residential, and where do you put all the people that want to live in the city of Woodstock? And this is an excellent location for that. It's a matter of the number of units and the height of the building, et cetera, the amount of parking spaces as we discussed here. Was I on mute the whole time?
No,
Go
just
ahead,
at the
Jared.
very end there. I think you're telling me to go ahead.
Oh, yeah, go ahead, Jared.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, I just got a message, joys of live people watching these, asking, I guess there's a mailbox, and Mr. Hannam might be able to answer this. There's a mailbox apparently on, what is that? I guess that would be Drew, for the neighborhood. Is that gonna have to get moved because of this? And I'm sure that's part of it, of the discussions and everything else.
We haven't got down to that detail, but I would assume that as part of the application, I can't remember offhand, and maybe Andrea can concur or not, whether Canadian Post were notified as part of this application. I can't remember seeing any comments, but they certainly would be a stakeholder with the development, and if it needs to be moved, then we'll find a suitable location, subject to the approval of city staff and Canada Post as well.
Yeah, and more just a question to the cost of that, only because I don't know, and I'm not sure if the planner would know this or not. Is that a city expense, or would that go on the developer if such a thing did have to be moved? Andrew, if you happen to know that. Yeah.
Through Councillor Schettenberg to Councillor Accioni's question, generally what's required is a concrete pad for the centralized mailbox. I think that's what they call. And so generally the cement pad is at the cost of the developer, I believe. Mr. Wallace can jump in if he disagrees with me. But yeah, we will consider the mailbox location. That'll be considered through the site plan approval process as to, if perhaps the applicant's proposing a tree in that exact spot, I'm not quite sure, then that would be looked at, and potentially the tree would go in that spot, and then the mailbox would be moved to another spot on that site. But that's generally, it would stay in that same area.
Yeah, just a concern from the neighborhood, of course, would be, especially during the winter time, if you push it away farther, you're making it harder, that roads or sidewalks that may not be fully cleared and everything else. So some concerns that way. So.
What I would say is it's right next to a hydro pole at this point in time. So if the developer doesn't have to move the hydro pole, he won't. So I would say that in respect to the existing Canada Post, if it doesn't have to be moved, then we'll keep it. But like in the grand scheme of things, we'll try and find a suitable location for local residents for that.
Do appreciate that.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
A follow-up question for Councillor Ron Fraser. Go ahead, Ron.
Thank you. And just first a comment, Jerry, you know it's a federal offense to touch a post office box, right? Without their permission. Mr. Hannam, just a quick question. 78 units, what would be the square footage per unit? So how big of apartments are these going to be? 1 bedroom, 2 bedrooms, 2 small bedrooms?
Yeah, so there's a mix, predominantly 2 bedrooms. So there's a handful of 1 bedrooms, generously sized at about 1,100 square feet. And then the majority of the 2 bedrooms will be around 1,300 square feet.
Okay, thank you. And would there be, I know that the County of Oxford, someplace there was a comment in the report about geared to income housing. Would that be a consideration for any of these apartments? Or would they be all market value?
Yeah, so first of all, I just want to emphasize that this is all rental units. And so the developer has a strong history of dealing with rental units throughout southwestern Ontario, has an extensive portfolio of those types of use. There's no specific demographic that's earmarked for this particular development. We would be targeting market rents for that. It wouldn't be subsidized housing at all.
Thank you. Thank you, Mark.
Yeah, I believe there's no more comments for our building inspector or our deputy county engineer, city planner, senior planner, that is Andrea. So maybe at this point in time, we will formally introduce Dave Hannam from Zelenka Preamo. You can give us your bit of your background, where you're from, and your municipal address and the name of the company that you work for. As we know, is the Southside Group in this instance, because you've appeared at our planning meetings in the past representing different clients. And is Tim Wickens on board too, the architect from Nicholas Sheffield?
Yeah,
as well. We'd like to be able to field questions to both of you gentlemen.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Any comments you'd like to make too?
Sure. So look, I'll go through it. And I don't have a formal presentation, but I wanted to highlight a few positive aspects of the development. So my name's Dave Hannam. I'm a senior associate with Zelenka Preamo. I'm a registered professional planner. Our planning consultancy is based in London at 318 Wellington Road. We're the planning consultants for the Southside Construction Management for these applications. Tim, the project architect, sadly is unavailable this evening, so it's just myself. Look, we've carefully reviewed staff's report. We welcome the favourable consideration of our applications. We're happy to deal with the proposed cap that Andrea mentioned as we move forward. I thought Andrea did an excellent job in terms of summarising the application, so I don't want to dwell on too much of that. But as I said, I wanted to pick up on a couple of things. I just wanted to re-emphasise the tenure aspect of this particular development is rental housing. And also, for those that don't know, the Southside Group is a reputable and accomplished developer. And this particular project, they will be the constructor and the owner of this project. So it will become an asset in their portfolio. In terms of, I think it's important to just pick up on a couple of points of Andrea's with regards to this particular site. While vacant now, it has historically been designated for residential purposes and accommodated significant institutional related development. And also it has previous approvals and as of right permissions that are compatible with what's been proposed as part of these applications. From a policy point of view, it's supported by all levels of land use planning, which encourages residential intensification at densities that we're proposing in this location. We feel as though it's well located for residential development and generally consistent with the character of the neighbourhood, which is a variety of residential and industrial and institutional uses. This development will provide all the requisite development facets that you would normally expect as part of a high quality residential development. One of the points that I wanted to pick up again was that as part of an official plan and zone change application, the plans are conceptual in nature initially, but the proposal itself will be further refined and thoroughly reviewed by staff as we move through the site plan application process, and it'll look at all of the detailed aspects such as snow removal and landscaping, fencing, adherence to noise issues, etc. So as such, we would respectfully request that council endorses staff recommendations and supports the official plan amendment application and approves in principle the zone change. Excuse me. I'd be happy to answer any additional questions that the council may have.
Are there any further questions or comments from council? Okay, at this point in time, we'd like to see if there's anybody who is registered to speak against this proposal. I believe we did, the one person that had registered, and I would assume he's ready to go, and that's Jim Smulders, who was to speak against the opposition, or speak in opposition of the proposal. If Jim Smulders is online, maybe our IT department can ensure that he comes forward if he's actually here tonight as a participant. The option always is you can participate in the planning meeting, which is essentially when you should be appearing to be able to answer questions and throw out your concerns, good, bad, or indifferent. But you can certainly appear also at Thursday afternoon city council meetings when the decision's actually made. Thursday council meetings at 1:30 in the afternoon. So is there anybody here to speak against the proposal? Item number 3 on our agenda for 245 Drew Street. Anybody here to speak in favor of the plan? Looks like we have nobody that would like to speak in favor or in plan. And as I mentioned before, there was no decision will be made tonight. We'll be doing that Thursday afternoon at City Council meeting at 1:30. We thank Mr. Hannam from Zlinka Preamble for coming forward to answer our questions and concerns here tonight from the planner from London and representing the Southside Group, the construction company.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Hannam.
Cheers.
As we move on in the agenda to item number 4, OP 20-19-8 and ZN 8-20-27, application for an official plan amendment and zone change. This time, believe it or not, the County of Oxford is our applicant, and 785 Southwood Way is technically the residential address. As Andrea Hackler can come forward and give us the presentation from the planning office.
Thank you. So this application is for an official plan amendment and a zone change, and it's for lands located more or less on the Woodingford Lodge site. Just by way of history, and I'm sure council is aware of this, but I believe it was a couple years ago, or maybe it was just in 2019, the county declared the lands on these excess lands on the Woodingford site as surplus lands, and they had determined that these would be ideal sites for affordable housing development. And the idea would be that the 3 sites, although they would potentially be in separate ownership, that they could all kind of work as a single parcel. And so each site provides its own parking. However, there is a shared access from Juliana Drive. And then these 2 parcels, as council may recall, I believe it was back in, again, in 2019, there was an approval to rezone these lands, and that was to permit 4 multiple attached dwellings with 24 affordable housing units, and they're kind of low-rise townhouse type developments. They're sort of pods of 6, and so this site, as well as this site, they have a shared access onto Southwood Way, and so each of them have access through this. There's a fire route on, and I can actually scroll down to show everyone. So there's this fire route acts as an access from Juliana Drive to this parcel, which is the subject land, as well as this parcel on the west side of the Woodingford Lodge site. And this site is currently under construction. And I believe that completion is expected quite soon. And so back in 2019, there was a zone change for this southern parcel. And at the time, it was for a 7-story retirement home with a total of 177 rooms. So at this point in time, the application is slightly different. Sorry, I should say that application was approved by council. However, the proposal never came to fruition. So at this point in time, the county is pursuing development of the site. And for the time being, and I believe that the long-term plan is that the site will be owned and operated by the county. And so the the county is applying for an official plan amendment to go from community facility to medium density residential, and then to rezone the subject property from a special community facility zone, which was to permit this retirement development. And then they're proposing to go to an R4 special. And that'll facilitate a 4-story apartment building with 48 units. So much different than what was previously approved, which was the 7-story retirement home with the 177 units. The intent for this proposal, these 48 units, is that they're all affordable housing units. And I believe that they are geared to seniors. So this southern portion is 1.6 acres. And as you are, I'm sure everyone's aware, it's vacant parcel. So the application, they are requesting site-specific site-specific provisions. And so they're looking to reduce the minimum lot frontage, and that's simply because, again, they're sharing the access onto Southwood Way. And so I believe each parcel has 9.5 meters, and then there's easements that have been established over each of the parcels, or they're in the process of being established for reciprocating access, and that would accommodate basically a two-way street, internal street, which is basically an extension of Southwood Way, but it would be under private ownership. And so that's basically why there's that reduced frontage request. There's also a request for, I'll just go to the proposed site plan. So there's also a request to reduce the minimum interior side yard for from the building to the lot line. And so that's along here. And then also, and that's on the north side, and then also to reduce the other interior side yard on the south side. And on the north side, it's from 9 meters to 6.3 meters. And on the south side, it's 9 to 7.3. And then the applicant is also needing to reduce the parking area setback up here from 1.5 meters to 0. However, staff are of the opinion that all of these requests for relief are fairly minor and technical in nature. And because there's the fire access on the one side, and then there's quite a grade differential between the rear property line and the medical clinic site to the south, we really don't feel that these setbacks are going to have any sort of impact on either of the neighboring properties. And then as we discussed with the previous applications with respect to parking, in this case, this site is providing all of the parking that is required. And so that should alleviate any sort of concerns with respect to congestion or parking on the street or anything like that. And then with respect, again, to traffic and congestion, staff are satisfied that there should be no issue with this development. It's relatively small development, but they have access to, again, Juliana and Southwood Way. And then at the time in 2019, a traffic impact study determined also that once Stonegate had been extended, that would be basically another street that people could use to access these sites. And so we really have no concerns with respect to traffic. Staff were satisfied with the application. Generally, the comments were supportive. Of course, we will be going through this proposal will go through site plan, and we'll look at drainage and snow storage and landscaping and all of those things, garbage removal at that point in time. The application was circulated to neighboring property owners. We did receive a letter of concern I did contact the neighboring property owner when we received the letter, because it seemed as though council will see that the letter's been attached. There are a number of questions more than comments. So I did call them to clarify any of the questions that they had. And in the end, they generally seemed satisfied with the proposal and didn't seem to have any further concerns with it. So staff are satisfied that the application is in keeping with the provincial policy statement. Again, it's in form of infill and intensification. It's a great use of an underutilized site, and it's an efficient use of municipal services and infrastructure. It's in keeping with the medium density designation that's being proposed. The subject lands are, sorry, lost my spot here. There, as I indicated earlier, it's 4 stories that are being proposed, and it's 48 units, which is right in keeping with that proposal. So we don't feel that any sort of site-specific policies need to be prepared, because this is right at the max. And so for medium density, so we have no concerns of somebody coming along down the line once this has been designated and zoned of anything changing from what council sees today. And then with respect to location, we're satisfied that it's close enough to parking, or sorry, public transit and shopping facilities, as well as any sort of Southside Park. So we feel that it's ideally located for a medium density development. So in that case, we feel that the application is supported by the provincial policy statement, as well as the official plan policies. And we're also satisfied that it's generally in keeping with the proposed zoning. So in light of that, we recommend that these applications also be given favorable consideration.
Any comments or concerns or questions from members of council? Councillor Jerry Accioni, you've got the floor.
Thanks, Mark. Through the chair to Ms. Hatchler. I know at one point, going back to the history of this property, there was talk about it being kind of, if memory serves me correct, we were talking about putting it together with Woodingford Lodge, like, you know, family members or something that would be living at Woodingford Lodge might be able to have a rental place. Is that still in play here at all? And the kind of the second part of that is the county. So the county is going to be the landlord here as well?
Through Councillor Schattenberg to Councillor Accioni. So you're right. At one point in time, there was a conversation about the whole site acting as, I believe they called it like a continuum of care. And the idea would be that there would be the residents in Woodingford, and then potentially spouses could live in either of the developments to the west and the south. I believe that at this point in time, the idea is that the units are available for seniors, and it is affordable housing. So I believe that if there was the ability to connect, you know, residents and other people that would be on the wait list for affordable housing units, that would probably try to be accommodated. That being said, I believe that, and I mean, I'm not an expert by any means, but Human Services does, I believe, have a wait list for affordable housing units and for seniors that are trying to get into units. So I don't know how they do the placement, but I think that, yes, there were conversations about sharing facilities and having, you know, joint events and different things like that. So yeah. I'm sure there could potentially, because the county is proposing to own and operate it, there could be opportunities, I think, for that type of thing in the future. But I could be speaking out of turn too.
Right. Okay. I would just, again, go my memory here. And initially, correct me if I'm wrong, but I do believe they were talking a lot more units back then as well. 60 to 80 units instead of just the 48 now. Is that not correct? Yeah, I'm going by memory here.
Yeah, that's correct. So the original proposal was a 7-story building, and it was with
Yeah, much less
77 rooms. Yeah.
70, yeah. Yeah, so any reason why, just thinking of the need again, any particular reason why they're not going to that initial size of building? Or I'm just kind of curious now, since we already kind of went over that.
Yeah, so I think what happened is at the time each of the parcels were put out for tender, and different developers came forward with proposals. And the one proposal that came forward was the one on the south side for the 7 stories. Since then, I believe that I mean, obviously that didn't come to fruition. So the county has
Right.
chosen something that I think that they can get funding for, and is probably more achievable on that site.
Okay. Okay, fair enough. Thank you.
Any further questions or comments from councilors? Don't see any. We've actually do not have a delegation here tonight to speak on behalf of the County of Oxford, but it's safe to assume that Andrea Hackler, the senior planner from the County of Oxford, was covering the bases and a lot of that information. Is there anybody here tonight to speak against the application? As Andrea mentioned, as has been mentioned, stated before this meeting, there certainly are comments attached to our agenda that you can see online too, where people have asked questions or made comments that do appear on the overall agenda. Is anybody registered to speak against the application? Is anybody registered here tonight to speak in favor of the application? Seeing none, I did believe there was not going to be any. Just a reminder that no decision here is made tonight. We come back on Thursday for the regular council meeting, Thursday afternoon at 1:30. Again, through Zoom and to the City of Woodstock website, you can participate and watch, but you can also register, as long as you're registered by tomorrow, you would be a delegate at the City Council meeting on Thursday, when we'll be discussing and actually making a decision on the 5 matters on tonight's agenda. Item number 5, long title here, B20-62-8, B20-63-8, and A20-11-8, B20-64, B20-65-8. That's actually a lot of numbers and letters in there, but it'll be explained. The application for consent, application for minor variance, and applications for consent for easement. And the applicants this time are Barbara Eltham, Paul and Amanda Eltham of 600 and 604 Devonshire Avenue. And once again, we welcome our senior planner, Andrea Hackler, to explain this. I guess it's complex, but it also makes sense if you start looking at it, this proposal.
Thank you. So the last applications before us tonight are for severances and easements. The application, as Councillor Scheinberg indicated, it seems far more complex than it actually is. And it's quite a lengthy report. Council is familiar with lot additions, they're familiar with rear yard infills. And so I probably won't go into great detail. I'm just going to try to give you an overview so you have a better understanding of what the applicant is actually proposing. So I'll just scroll up here. And then if council has any questions afterwards or clarification, then I'm happy to answer any of those. So the subject application is proposing, so initially a lot addition. And so basically what's occurring here is the applicant is proposing, or the property owner is proposing to create a severance here, and then give the parcel on this side, they're proposing to give them street frontage. And so they're doing so the first part is that they do the lot addition and they have the lot to be enlarged. And so there's that for first proposal. So as council may recall, this parcel was created a number of years ago, and there actually is a house has been constructed on that site, and they've constructed it over to this side. And so they already have frontage onto Devonshire. So then this proposal, so they do the lot addition, and then they have then they're doing a further severance to create this second parcel. And then, as you can see, then they have street access to Devonshire. So both parcels have street access to Devonshire. Now, this original parcel is also going to share this access. And so the easements strictly are for access and servicing. And so the servicing comes down already to this site. And at this point, staff are under the impression that it'll be shared service that'll branch off and go to the lot A. And then, as I said, all three would have access easements over this laneway so that everyone could access Devonshire. And then, as council knows, we don't create landlocked parcels, and so that's why they have these narrow frontages. But overall, they will achieve a frontage of, it would be shared of 12 meters. And so we feel that that's adequate space. The fire department can get their emergency vehicles down that lane easily and get to both of the rear parcels. So that's positive for the proposal. The only other thing is that a minor variance was also requested, and that was simply to reduce the lot frontage, because these are these rear yard infills, and council's seen them before. They're we call them flag shaped or key shaped lots. And so they're narrow and skinny at the top. But as long as historically we've always supported the ones that have at minimum 6 meters of frontage for the emergency services to be able to access those houses in the back. The fire department, in addition to that, has requested that the dwelling that will be constructed, that it'll be, sorry, I should have mentioned too, it'll be a single detached dwelling, and this is already a single detached dwelling. The dwelling that will be constructed, the fire department has asked that that dwelling be sprinklered to ensure safety of the dwelling and the residents inside it. So the application was circulated to staff. Staff were supportive of the application. There are a number of conditions that staff have requested, mostly with respect to the easements and the servicing, to ensure that all of that is in place. And so they're fairly standard conditions. I should point out too, backyard infill is something that's supported by the official plan. It's supported in low density residential areas. The lots that are being, or the lot that's being created, and as well as the remnant parcel, they are adequately sized to accommodate a dwelling and meet the setbacks and provide parking and whatnot. And so we're satisfied that the proposal is in keeping with the official plan. And then, as I indicated, the parcels are both in keeping with the provisions of the zoning bylaw, with the exception of that reduced lot frontage. I think the application was sent out to neighboring property owners, and in this case, we did not receive any correspondence from any neighboring property owners. And so overall, we're satisfied that this application can be supported by council, as we think that it's good development, it's a good use of an underutilized site. And as such, we would recommend that this application also be supported.
Thanking Andrea for a report. Are there any questions? Councillor Jerry Accioni, you've got the floor. Go ahead.
Thank you, through the chair, to Ms. Haxler. I guess just to clarify, you did mention it, but is it a shared driveway then for all three units, or is there a separate? I never got to drive by there today, so I do apologize, but is there a separate driveway already for the back, or will all three be sharing, is the question.
So through the chair to Councillor Accioni's question, I'll just actually, I think that if we go to the aerial, you'll be able to, oh no, you can't see it. But basically when this parcel was created from this original, this was all one parcel at one point in time, then a laneway was established, and this dwelling, as I indicated, has been built. And as you can see, there's like a horseshoe type driveway here that connects to
Front of
that
the house.
driveway.
Yeah.
So the idea is that although this parcel could have its own driveway onto Devonshire, also from a traffic standpoint, it's better if they all shared an access, and the applicant is more than willing to provide that. I actually think that, and Ms. Eltham can speak further to that, but I actually think it's all family members that are constructing the dwellings back here with the parents living up here. So, but we do establish permanent easements for access to ensure that, in the future, if these parcels are sold, that
If they
there's
sell,
no
yeah.
disputes. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for our senior planner? At this point in time, we do have a delegate for this matter. Item number 5 on our agenda tonight. It's Barbara Eltham. Can you give us your current address, Barbara, and anything you'd like to just sort of generally state based on the proposal as presented here by our planner?
Hello?
Yeah, you there now, Barbara? Thanks.
Yes, sorry. I don't know if the video is working now or not, though.
No, the video is not working, but we certainly do hear you.
Okay. I live at 600 Devonshire Avenue. And to address the 3 properties having access or at the front, if you drive by our house, our location, you'll see that it's just a very short distance, and the one driveway goes to the east of the main house to the back, and our driveway goes up to our house. So it's not like there'll be lots of cars sharing that one section. It's just that little bit at the front.
Any questions from councilors for our delegate, Barbara Eltham, tonight? Just to clarify, Barbara, is it safe to assume your video is working now? Just to
Okay.
clarify then, is it going to be 3 family members, like in essence, all related to you, that will be living in 3 detached homes on the same, what was the same original lot that's going to be severed?
Yes, yes. Our one son lives on the house that was just built recently on the east side of the property. And so the new lot that is being created, we haven't quite decided yet if we're going to build a retirement home and our other son will take this house or vice versa. But it definitely is a family thing, and it's not necessarily going to happen immediately, but we just wanted to have the property, the lot there for when the decision is made.
And therefore, the ownership technically for each one of these 3 lots will be conveyed separately. So to assume that this would never sort of re-emerge as 2 lots again. Because you don't want the properties to merge again to be single ownership. You want them all to be in different name ownerships, all 3 lots.
I don't quite understand what you mean.
Well, it's happened in the past, for example, where somebody owns 2 properties side by each, and because they don't create a numbered company or don't put one property in their son's name or something like that, the titles do merge one more time. So obviously you're going through the severance process now to be able to create 3 separate lots for always to be 3 separate homes. So in theory, 10 years from now, you could sell all 3 separate houses separately, and everyone from the Eltham family could reside somewhere else in theory, because it would be all 3 separate lots. That's the idea here tonight.
Yeah, yes, there'll be 3 separate lots.
Any other questions from councilors for Barbara Altum here tonight? I don't believe we had anybody registered to speak against the application, but is there anybody online here to speak against the application? Anybody online here to speak in favor of the application?
I do.
Yes, you're the you're the applicant, the delegation, for sure. And as I said before, part of this public processing, whether it be on Zoom or whatever format we use in council chambers, it does sometimes become an effort where somebody has to obviously come in here and do some public speaking, but the idea also being that if you can write your thoughts down on a piece of paper too and submit them to the city clerk, and they get added to our agenda, which has happened in many of our 5 items here tonight where we've received comments from neighboring companies, businesses, or individuals or residential stakeholders. So we thank you, Barbara, for joining us tonight. As we said, there will be no formal decisions made here tonight whatsoever because council, it's all on council agenda on Thursday afternoon at 1:30 p.m. And that'll be on through Zoom one more time, the city's YouTube channel as well. And of course, it's the only meeting for the month of January. So it will also be on Rogers TV to be able to watch that. And if you wanted to be a delegate still at Thursday City Council meeting, let our clerk office know by 2 o'clock tomorrow afternoon, and you can still register to be on a delegation on Thursday afternoon's City Council meeting. So can I have a motion to adjourn for tonight? Go ahead, Councilor Archioni, and seconded by Councilor Ron Fraser. All those in favor? And we thank everybody for participating. And again, council meeting is on Thursday at 1:30 p.m. Thanks for participating here tonight and stay safe.